If you're like me and you like to wear cologne every day and you kind of consider cologne part of your wardrobe, you put it on when you put on your socks and your underwear and your undershirt, you've probably looked into some of the higher end fragrances that exist out there, even if you've never really considered picking any of them up for yourself. Companies like, Creed and Yves Saint Laurent or Boss or Chanel, they have some very highly priced, very sought after, very well reviewed and talked about fragrances like Creed Aventus or Clear Mountain Water, or I'm trying to think like Brut or Azure or any of those. There are some that are slightly more affordable, like $60, $80, $100, but from there they kind of range up $150, $200, $300, $500 for a bottle. And for a lot of people, this is just completely out of the range of what you'd consider reasonable for something you're going to put on every day and probably run out of in a year and a half, and have to rebuy. That's very expensive. Imagine you bought, a $500 pair of shoes, and after a year and a half they were trash and you had to throw them away and replace them. Nobody would be willing to make that investment. But they're nice to look at and learn about and read reviews on or hear why that fragrance in particular is so sought after and so famous and so well loved within the community of fragrance and scent reviewers. And I'm sure it's the same thing with women's perfume. So I myself have done this, and recently I've sort of been looking back into it because I have a problem. I have two colognes that I wear. One that I've had for about a decade that I'm just about out of, that is no longer made. It's discontinued. And if you want to get a replacement for it, you either have to find a now very rare, still mostly full bottle of it, which people want a substantial amount of money for, hundreds of dollars for, if not more. Or you have to find like the next best thing, which in the case of this cologne, there really isn't a great option for. So I'll show you the two that I wear, then I'll talk about what it is that I've found. So first off, the one that you can still get that I wear every day that is still available is this one right here. This is called Sauvage by Dior. This is Sauvage Elixir. If you've ever seen any of the cologne commercials with Johnny Depp and he's like playing guitar in the desert and there's like a Black Panther with him or something like that, that's this cologne right here. It smells really nice. It's very strong. You only have to put on like 1 or 2 sprays. I wear mine directly on my skin because cologne tends to take on kind of a unique factor when it mixes with your body's natural oils. And so if you want to have a unique variant of whatever cologne you wear that smells just like you, like that is unique to you, wear your cologne on your skin. So I wear that every day pretty much, but lately I've been dabbling with this other cologne that I've had this bottle of for probably 10 years, and I used to use it very sparingly, and because of that, there's still a little left in the bottle, but it's just about gone. And that's this cologne right here by Yves Saint Laurent. This is Rive Gauche Pour Homme, so Rive Gauche for men. This bottle here, it looks like a little hairspray aerosol can. This is a very unique scent. It smells, well, it's not unique, it's familiar, but it's unique in that they were able to create it so well as a fragrance. It smells like a barbershop, like a really nice, like French barbershop. Like if you've ever gone and gotten a straight razor shave on your face and a really nice haircut, and afterwards they're brushing your face off to get the hair off of you, and they've used a nice shaving cream on your face, and then they take the towel off your neck and they sort of brush you off, and you're on your way out the door, and you've got that clean, powdered talc barbershop smell. I don't know how to explain it. If you're a guy and you've been to a nice barbershop, you'll know what I'm talking about. You feel great for the rest of the day because you have that smell like in your face. It's wonderful. And then you take a shower and it's gone. This encapsulates that smell perfectly. It kind of cranks it up to 11 and adds a little touch of masculinity to it, as if it needed that. But this is a really great fragrance because that's what it recreates, and it's perfect, and I love it. But this is almost empty, and they don't make this anymore. They don't even make a variant of it anymore, I believe. They used to make a variant of it, but it wasn't as good according to most people, and now they don't make it anymore at all. And if you want to find a bottle of this, which will probably be mostly used online, it's very, very expensive, hundreds of dollars, if not more. And so I wanted to look into, okay, what happens when that runs out? Do I want to try to replace that, or do I want to move to something else? If I move to something else, I want it to smell as good as that. To do that, to be sure that you're going to get something that you really love, that's really unique, you have to go into this range of higher end fragrances, and I don't want to spend that kind of money on something that's, consumable. So I started poking around, and what I found is there's a company called the Dua brand, D-U-A brand, the Dua brand. You just go to theduabrand.com. And they're a company based, I believe, in San Francisco in the US, and their goal is to create near perfect identical clones to pretty much every fragrance that's ever been made, colognes and perfumes, so men, women, unisex, whatever. And they've done a remarkable job at it. There are people who have, professional reviewer channels just for fragrances, men, women, what have you, and they will often compare the Dua brand clone of a fragrance to the original fragrance. Again, you're talking about something like Creed Aventus, where a bottle costs $500, and maybe even you're talking about a specific batch of Creed Aventus from, 10 years ago that there were only 1,000 bottles made of, and that everybody in the fragrance community who cares about these things says was the best batch of Creed Aventus ever made. It had a certain uniqueness to it. The Dua brand will go get a bottle of that, and somehow through reverse engineering and a lab spectroscopy, whatever, they're going to figure out exactly what made that scent smell the way that it did, and they're going to recreate it, bottle it, and sell it to you for somewhere between $20 and $60 a bottle. That's amazing. And these reviewers online will take the Dua brand clone and compare it to the real thing, which, because they're reviewers of fragrances, they actually have a bottle of, and they'll do a side-by-side comparison, and they themselves will tell you, I, as a professional reviewer, cannot tell the difference. These are almost identical. Maybe one is slightly stronger, one has a slightly different top note or an initial impression out of the bottle, but then they kind of settle into this perfectly balanced one-to-one comparison. And they're all range between $20 and $60. And so I went on the Dua brand website. And the nice thing is they're not subtle or coy about the fact that they're cloning fragrances. That is what they do. They don't like that these companies, whether or not you think it's reasonable for them to do so, they don't like that these companies charge so much for their fragrances that most people can't afford them. And so they create their own versions, and by their own versions, I mean basically the exact same thing. And I don't know what it is that allows them to do this without getting sued for trademark or copyright infringement. Maybe you can't trademark a fragrance, I don't know. But however it is, they're allowed to recreate these things almost perfectly. And then in the description of the fragrance themselves on the Dua brand website, it tells you, it says, this fragrance is inspired by whatever it is. And so if you wanted a bottle of Creed Aventus, but you don't want to spend $500, you could just go to the Dua brand and search Creed Aventus, and it's going to pull up, I think actually that fragrance, because I was looking at it specifically, is called Poseidon's Cologne or something like that. And when you look it up, it says right underneath it, inspired by Creed Aventus. And like I was talking about before, there might even be specific batches of a cologne that everybody says were the greatest that were ever made. And the Dua brand will go out and get a bottle of that and make a copy of that exact batch. And they have that for Creed Aventus. There's some batch that was batch 13LTZ or something like that. That's the serial number from the batch. And the Dua brand created a clone of that specific batch. They also take other fragrances that are popular, and they might take two different ones from two completely different brands and mash them together to create a completely new fragrance, because maybe there was a lot of people online that were saying, oh, I love the masculinity of this and the floral notes of that. I wish there was a cologne that mashed them both together. And so the Dua brand was like, yeah, sure, we can do that. We have the means to do that. And so they do. And so pretty much any cologne you've ever heard of or read about or wanted to try that either doesn't exist anymore or was super limited in its availability or just costs an arm and a leg and so you can't afford it, the Dua brand has their own clone of it that, according to cologne reviewers for the most part, is a perfect match, or as close as you could ever think to get to an identical match when it comes to fragrances. And so I looked for this one. I looked for Rive Gauche Pour Homme by Yves Saint Laurent. And of course, they have a clone of it, and it's $50 for a 30 milliliter bottle. And this is, I want to say this is a 75 milliliter. So this, I think, I got used about half full. My mother got it for Christmas a decade ago for me because it had just been discontinued. I think it was about half full, and I think she said she paid $150 for it. So this is something like a $200 or $300 bottle of cologne. So for a fifth of that price, a quarter of that price, you can get something that is going to last you at least a year or two, 30 milliliters, if you wore it every day. I've also read, if you care about this at all, I do, because things like this annoy me. I've read that the Dua brand fragrance bottles have a really good atomizer. If you don't know, the atomizer is the thing that actually spritzes when you press down on it on the top of the bottle, whether it be perfume, cologne, whatever. The thing that actually aerates the fragrance into the spray that then goes onto your body. This one right here, the Sauvage Elixir by Dior, this actually has a kind of crappy atomizer. It sometimes takes 2 or 3 clicks of mini spurts to get a nice full spurt. And so every time I have to do that, I'm wasting cologne. But I want it to be on me evenly. I like to do one on my chest and then one down each arm, and that's kind of how I do my cologne. This is strong enough that honestly you could just do one on your chest and you'd probably be good, but I only put my cologne on once at about 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and then I don't put any more on for the rest of the day, and I like to still have a little bit on me by the time I go to bed or shower at night before bed. And so I do the 3, 1 on each arm, 1 down each arm, and 1 across my chest and my sort of torso. So that one, the spritzer, the atomizer, is kind of meh. It's not reliable. The one on this Yves Saint Laurent is better, but it still has its moments where you'll go to do it and you'll get kind of nothing, or you get a little spurt, and you really want that nice big tss. And so you have to try it a couple times. I've heard that the Duo brand atomizers are really solid and reliable, and every single time you click it down, you get a nice big, nice even spray. So that's good too. So for 20 to 60 bucks, you get a near perfect clone of any fragrance that's ever existed that you can look up using its real name, so they're not hard to find or discern what it's supposed to be. They give you all the, top notes, middle notes, opening notes, whatever, the different smells that are in the fragrance if you're into that kind of stuff, but rest assured, they are whatever they need to be to recreate that fragrance the way that it's supposed to smell. And they're in really well-designed, really sort of high-performing bottles. So it's sort of great all around. So I put 2. I put 2 on my Christmas list. I put the one to replace this Rive Gauche, which I think is actually just called Rive Gauche, because Rive Gauche means river something. And so theirs is called Rive Gauche, which is kind of just a play on the exact same name. And I think I did put the one for Creed Aventus, which I think is called Poseidon's Cologne. And so those are the 2 that I put on my list. But if they are as good as they claim to be, I don't see why you couldn't, once a year or once every 6 months, however often you want to add to your collection, pick up a new cologne, especially if they were having a sale and it was like 20 or 30 bucks, grab 2. And you can add these super high-end, rare, collectible level designer fragrances to your own collection, your wardrobe, as I think of it, for very little money. Like, it just seems like a great option. So anyways, I've rattled on enough about this. TheDuoBrand.com, the Duo brand, perfect, near perfect clones of any fragrance, whether they be discontinued, limited, or high-end, in well-designed, well-performing bottles for very little money. Totally probably worth checking out. But anyways, hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.